Biker Bones is back. 5 years ago, Striker Mauler spam was the meta, and recently the Bomb Blitz was so OP you could throw it into any setup to make it better. But with a price nerf to the Blitz and a buff to other bomb shooters, it's hard to deny how strong they are when paired with Striker Jones. We'll start with a new buff. Maulers, Assassins, and the Eliminator all got a huge damage boost to blimps when crosspaths with frags. This was a crosspath you'd never get, but now it makes them even better at taking out blimps, especially for how cheap they are. And you guessed it, we're going to be placing a lot of them. For this strat, we'll get through the early game however possible and play Striker as early as we can. We'll follow him with an early game carry like a Submarine, Dragon's Breath, or Destroyer. It doesn't really matter, but we do need help getting through the early game as bomb shooters are not the best at that. We'll follow this up with a 4-2-0 Bloon Impact and 2 Villages. One as a 002 discount and the other as a 420 primary mentoring. This gives us the camo detection we need and makes tier 1 upgrades free for primary monkeys. We'll finish this in the early 40s and place a few Moab Maulers in its radius, making them 032s. These will destroy any blimps heading our way. The Bloon Impact is surprisingly good at selling ceramics, and our early game carry can handle the normal balloons, so we have a very well-rounded setup already. Next, we'll upgrade one of our Maulers to a Moab Assassin and set it to strong, while leaving the rest of the Maulers on first. This adds a good amount of damage and gives us an ability that can one-shot Moabs or BFBs on a 30-second cooldown, which makes rounds 50 through 70 much easier. Alternate this with Striker Stun, and no round is that scary. If you're on a harder map, you can pick up some extra damage with a recursive cluster or spiked balls, but ideally we go straight for the primary expertise. Not only will this make all of our primary monkeys better, it makes tier 2 upgrades free on them and adds a massive ballista attack that tears through ceramics at all stages of the game. The goal is to get this before round 75, but if you're on an advanced map or easier, it's pretty easy to get in the mid to late 60s. And once you have this down, I like to spam 032 Maulers. They're incredibly cheap since all we have to do is pay for the base monkey and the tier 3 upgrade, both of which are discounted by our other village. And they have a ton of range thanks to the bottom crosspath and all our buffs. One thing I like to do in the middle of this is place a glue gunner where bomb shooters can't fit, since it has a much smaller footprint. This reserves the spot for a relentless glue later, and because the upgrades are free, I normally make it a 022 until the late game. But try to work this guy in as he's a super nice support to have later on. But once you're done placing Maulers, you can go back and upgrade them to Assassins. It's not necessary, but it adds a ton of damage. Its main attack goes from dealing 16 damage to 31 against Moab class balloons, and its frags go from dealing 5 to 10, which is significant since there's 8 frags with each shot. Plus, its ability creates 16 fragments, all that do the extra damage. Now, it's clear that the Moab Assassins are carrying with the help of the primary expertise. So why do we need Striker Jones in this? Well, there are 4 reasons. The first is that he makes black balloons less resistant to explosive damage as the game goes on. At level 5, he makes them have a 50% chance to pop 2 explosions, and at level 19, he ups it to 100%. That way, we don't have to pick up a MIB for our bomb shooters to damage blacks, zebras, or DDTs. The second is that he makes every bomb shooter and mortar monkey have extra attack speed, and any tower in his radius gets more range and pierce. Third, he has his concussive shell ability, which is so spammable. This shoots a guided shell that deals damage and stuns whatever balloons it hits. This is amazing for harder rounds like 40, where you can either stun the blimp or the ceramics inside, giving you extra time to pop them. And finally, we have his artillery command ability. This resets the cooldown of all bomb shooters and mortar monkeys when used, which is incredible when you have so many Moab Assassins. And at level 20, it also gives them double damage and pierce. So on a tough round, you can use all of your Moab Assassins, then artillery command to double damage, double pierce them, and you'll have all your abilities back instantly. It's actually incredible. But we're not done. I got down 8 Moab Assassins and a Relentless Glue, and it was clear I was going to have over $60,000 left over. Here, you can spend your money on whatever you want. Something smart would be a Sabotage Ninja, as that's one of the best abilities in the game, but I wanted to do something else. I upgraded my Dragon's Breath to a Wizard Lord Phoenix, as I almost never get that tower. And in my other run, I got a biggest one as he gets buffed a ton by Striker as well. But something else you can do is mix this with our next strategy, and that is using the Bomb Blitz as a mid to late game weapon. Once again, we'll want to get through the early game however possible, getting Striker down early. Depending on the map, you might need to build more towers to get through the early game, but we will be rushing a cluster bombs. We'll make this guy a 003, then crosspath it as a 023. The only thing you have to worry about are the camos in the 30s, so you can either upgrade your starting monkeys, or if you have the time, you can make a camo village. That's definitely the preferred option, but it's not always possible. Then we'll go back to the cluster bomb, make it a recursive cluster, and buff it with a berserker brew. This elk buffed bomb shooter can carry for the next 20 rounds, on top of being able to pop the around 40 Moab, especially if you use a concussive shell. And no round should be a threat once you give it a 220 village for camo detection and extra attack speed. On many maps, this will be able to go straight to a Bomb Blitz, letting you get it in the early 60s. If you're on a slightly tougher map though, I like to give it 2 Moab Assassins and a Bloon Impact. Just like the last strat, this is very well rounded, but instead of saving up for a PEX, we're saving up for a Bomb Blitz. Really, you just need to get this guy by around 75, which is very doable considering it's only $32,400 on chimps. Once you get this guy, the rounds become a piece of cake until the 80s. He fills the map with explosions, being a very reliable source of damage, especially with the Striker Jones buff. With just his main attack, he would be a solid addition to our defenses, but he also gets the passive Bomb Storm ability, where if a Bloon leaks, instead of losing a life, he lights up the map, dealing tons of damage to everything, letting you catch up on the Bloons. This has a 60-second cooldown, and it can be reset with Striker Jones Artillery Command. Because he's not super expensive, we have plenty of money and time for another tier 5 monkey. I like to upgrade my Berserker Brew to a 420 stronger sim first to make this guy even better, but if you're trying to save money, you can always make your Alchemist a 301 as that buff is plenty strong. But after this, we just want a little more Moab damage. And what's better than picking up the newly buffed Moab Assassins? We'll get a few 042 bomb shooters, and from here, you can get whatever you want. Chom Chom used this strat to beat the new map Mushroom Grotto with $109,000 left over, and said it was pretty easy to do. But what I like to do is make use of Striker's Pierce buff and pair him with either a Permaspike or Carpet of Spikes. While building a strat around this Pierce buff alone is not very strong, I found success using it as a complementary piece. So after the Bomb Blitz and a couple Assassins, I pick up my tier 5 Spactory. On Dark Castle, I made a Permaspike near the back of the track, and we were able to buy this thing in the early 80s before anything got dangerous. And we easily had a huge pile of spikes by the time the 90s came around. For the rest of the game, I just spent my money on a Relentless Glue and then more Moab Assassins, as you really only face blimps in the late game. Then, on Off the Coast, I went from the 2 Assassins to a Carpet of Spikes around 91, so right when the rounds really start to ramp up in difficulty. And just like last game, I went back to the well by getting more Assassins and a Relentless Glue. I'm always super impressed with how fast the Assassins break down BFBs and below. I mean, we got them down to ceramics by the time they made it to Striker's range. The only thing is that I should work on using Concussive Shell more often, as it has such a short cooldown. But this also led to an easy win, and we had over $25,000 left over. And after each game, I looked at the Assassin's damage. Even when we get them down late, they deal 50 to 75,000 damage, and the ones we get earlier in the game are at the 100 to 200,000 damage mark, so super efficient damage. Now, you can mix these two strats and get a Bomb Blitz with a primary expertise and then spam Assassins, but it's a bit clunky. The Blitz doesn't benefit that much from the PEX, and there isn't a defined build order, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it was fun to combine them. I did it on Sunken Columns to great success and had enough money for a Moab Eliminator, and I did it again on Ancient Portal, where I ended the game with the biggest one. The amount of money left over from both strats leave the doors wide open, and they can be used to beat any map in the game. On Experts, it gives you the leeway to buy necessary monkeys, and on easier maps, you can pick up just about any tier 5 tower. On another brick, I bought an Inferno Ring because it goes well with top path villages, and on Enchanted Glade, I followed the Bomb Blitz up with an Archmage and Blue Incineration, both of which are fairly expensive towers. But that brings me to my final point. This video was to talk about the Striker Jones meta and pairing him with the recently buffed Assassins and the very strong Bomb Blitz. However, Striker Jones and Mortar Monkeys have been a strong strategy for years. The biggest one, Poppinaw and Bloonsin, can all be used even on the hardest maps, which adds even more flexibility to Striker's game. So, if you haven't tried out Striker Jones recently, you want to see the new Assassin buffs, or just dabble with the Bomb Blitz, I highly recommend these strats as they are very strong right now.